Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to SCM Pro Forum's Roundtable with the theme Digital Acceleration of Supply Chains. Today's focus would be on food industry, and I thank everyone for being there. Special thanks to our speakers for sparing time and coming here for the discussion. I would like to thank SAP for their support to the roundtable. So let's quickly begin, and to that, let me invite on stage our speakers to lead the discussion. We have Sunit, Associate Director, Plant and Transportation Lead at Mondelez International. Sridhar, Senior Associate Director at Kellogg's Company. Sanjeev, Executive Vice President, Manufacturing at DIAGEO India. Bharat, VP Manufacturing at Olam. Devender, Vice President, Operations at Tata Coffee. Anchal, Director, Global Center of Excellence, DSC at SAP India. And Dr. Rakesh Singh, Chairman, Institute of Supply Chain Management. I would request you all to kindly come up on stage and request Dr. Rakesh Singh to kindly lead the discussion ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 5th Roundtable series on digital acceleration of supply chain. This is focused towards the food industry. In order to understand the impact of disruptions, and all of us know what disruption has done to the overall industry and supply chain in particular, and how supply chain has been the major focus of acceleration, not just digital acceleration of businesses. We saw disruption coming. It affected the supply side. Then there were lockdowns. There were sudden stoppage of demand. Then there was a stoppage of factory. The worker shortages. Then it was difficult to secure logistics, transportation, and warehousing. And then the second phase, and now we hear the second strain. Hope it doesn't go global. But even despite the disruptions, there have been numerous vulnerabilities in the supply chain that has actually worked as a very, stumbling block in maximizing the profitability from the supply chain in the larger context of strategic profitability. Today, we actually have gathered to look at food industry and more focus on manufacturing supply chain and its interaction with the logistics as well as with the back end in sense of suppliers and procurement. So to start with, let us first see what is the stage of supply chain status today. Both pandemic, non-pandemic issues can be brought about, and see how digital acceleration has been happening. Not an evaluation of digital acceleration, but more so because what we have found that companies with prior digital accelerations have done extremely well during the pandemic. But what are those business as well as technological issues that companies are facing? So, to start with, let me start with Devender Reddy from Tata Coffee.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. My privilege to be in this forum. So, yeah, and I think this is a situation all of us have been, and as manufacturing and operations professionals, we've been in the thick of things. While I think everybody could work from home, I think a majority of us as well as at least our teams had to be on the ground. And I think that is the single biggest challenge that was placed as people. You couldn't work from home. Majority of the people couldn't work from home. And I think that's the single biggest challenge. And how do you get the human asset home, from home to your place, assuring safety? And of course, the fact that you had to first see, unless the human asset came to the production plant or to the logistics area, there was nothing that is going to happen. And I think that is the first reminder that the human asset needed to be treated as an asset, guarded first and foremost. And I think that was the first, and it is, at least for us at Tata Coffee, it dawned upon us that they need to be protected first, right? So in terms of, while I will get into the digital side of it, the whole purpose was to actually, it needed bare knuckles kind of a strategy of actually going to individual people, talking to different people, working with different unions wherever they were there, and assuring them of their safety, trying to, goad them, inspire them to come to the factory. And then there's the whole rigmarole of, trying to find out what are the safe mechanisms, trying and putting in places, processes and systems which ensured, because if you look at the first set of guidelines which had come from the Home Ministry and the Ministry of Health and various other, including the FSSI, had actually placed a lot of emphasis on employee safety, had also placed a lot of emphasis on the individual companies or the leadership being responsible for whatever actions or inactions that were being taken. So like everyone must have done by now, it was that everyone was caught unawares in terms of how do you ensure social distancing digitally. And that was one of the first things that we had taken up. And I'm sure that a lot of other companies which were there were looking at how do we ensure that while the initial process of manual segregation, manual record keeping, which was again a requirement statutorily of having to have people recorded as to who has come in contact with whom, who has moved from where to whom. So this was the entire thing, and therefore there was some acceleration in terms of ensuring that level of safety that is given to people in terms of electronically embedding, as it were, every person into the system and ensuring that everybody had a certain zone and they were stuck to their zones, or if there was a report of any movement between different zones, and that was collated as a data, and this data was taken and fed into information where there was a programmed intervention in terms of whether it is testing and then the whole risk assessment management related to that. So I think that's the first learning that we have in terms of the disruption at the manufacturing plant itself. The other thing that I think what's very relevant is also to look at how some of these strategic agendas of manufacturing, which actually were looking at cost optimization, now had to look at
I think we have just lost him. So, Sunit, if you can take the discussion forward. And in terms of the impact on manufacturing and the vulnerabilities in the manufacturing supply chain, what were the areas of concerns at that point of time, both in terms of efficiency and terms of resilience?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And really, I'm really thankful to you that you have invited me for this session. So coming to the point straight away, see, the moment we got to know on March 22nd about the lockdown and all, so two things which came to our mind is about, in terms of how to maneuver the resources and what are the guidelines from Ministry of Home Affairs. So each and every day, I'll say right from March 22nd onwards till May 22nd, the kind of intense discussions that we used to have with the government officials to understand what are the protocols and what are the key measures that we have to take. So what we did was that we tried to formulate a strategy. Firstly, managing the external stakeholders very well, because the rules were changing, the protocols were new. So I was trying to acclimatize with the protocols first. So a lot of work happened, and we did it pretty well there. And then the most important part was about the people out here, because definitely when I think by April 10th onwards, when people were more thick into about the COVID news and all, so there was a kind of a fear among the people and the workers as well. So man-to-man management was an important thing. So there's nothing called digital that time was applied, but we created a kind of a customer cell wherein each and every individual in the shop floor, I mean the entire workforce, they were called to understand how they are, how are they staying, is there any health concern or not. So I think that was a very important point of engagement with the people out there, and that really helped a lot, because the kind of fear, and Pune was an epicenter. I represent the Induri factory, which is situated in Pune here. It was the epicenter of all these things which was happening for the last 7-8 months. I think till October 15th it was into the news. From October 15th onwards it has subsided. So that was the first and foremost that we have done, because we had to run the factory. We did not shut the factories. So that is the best thing that we have been able to do it. The other thing which was very important, so there are 4 or 5 pillars. So that is the first pillar about safety and convincing people to be in the factory. That's the first thing. The second was about definitely the government officials, the way we engage with them, and in terms of understanding and taking it forward from there. The third was basically, I think everyone has done that, but I would like to share with you the kind of protocols right from the time a employee enters into the bus or the vehicle until the time he enters into the security gate, he operates in his machines, and finally he goes back home. The kind of rigor that we have put in, technology definitely we did put after 2 or 3 months. So initially we just put the manual practices there. It was really superb. Officials visited, saw it very well, and things went on pretty well. The fourth important thing is about the continuity of the factory operations. Now, continuity of the factory operations is a function of the supplier also, right? So you might be having the best practices. Your people are all engaged. They are coming to the factories and all. What happens to the supplier if the materials are not available? How do you do that? So what we learned is that yes, vendor managed inventory plus the bigger network of the suppliers really helped a lot, and that is exactly, I'll say, one of the key pillar. And how do we strengthen that pillar as we go forward? Because it's not the supply chain of our own factories, our own company supply chain. It's an extended supply chain. I'm just talking about the upstream part. I'll talk to downstream later. So what we realize is that we divided the key suppliers, the distance of the supplier from the factory, what are the key concerns, and also helped them to take permissions as well, so that the entire the wheel rotates. So I think that was a key imperative, and the great learnings also happened in the course of the time of managing them as well. The fifth pillar was basically, I'll say, in terms of how to I'll talk about the softer part here. I think the communication was a very important factor here. Very intense communication with the shop floor colleagues, very intense communication with the district officials, very intense communication with our own colleagues to motivate them, constantly engage them. I think these 5 pillars really helped a lot to move. And as we moved ahead, definitely there were days when nothing could move, and there were days when we got some success. And after that, so the team understood. And this place, I think from May 22nd onwards and all, some COVID cases started coming here. So imagine a situation like COVID scenarios firstly came to some places, then it came to the near locality. And the moment near locality COVID cases surfaced, the kind of atmosphere of the people, the kind of atmosphere totally changed. So managing those things were also very different issues. Then after 3 months, we started the digital part out here. And there exactly we could sense how digital can really take us to the place where we want in terms of the social distancing.
Sunit, I think we'll come back to the digital into second question.
Okay.
Okay.
So this was the
I think,
yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So
anything
this was
else to?
Yeah. So this is the one part. The other part which I want to touch upon is that the transporters. So typically our main motto was that there should not be any COVID case inside. That was the main motto. How to maintain the safety. So the zoning inside the shop floor, right? Then in terms of the sanitation, the frequency of the sanitation, then creating the barricades in the canteen so that no one faces each other. Then in the workstations as well, wherever we can create some kind of engineering stuffs out there so that people have a healthy distance of 3 to 4 meters, or if they're facing each other because of the machine out there, can we have a barricade? So a lot of engineering intervention also we did. Net we tried to create an atmosphere wherein people can work safe. And I'm glad to tell you that the workforce came and told me after 3 months that they were safer inside in comparison to going outside. So that was a kind of energy, that was a kind of a captivating moment that we had, wherein initially there was a resistance, but after that, once we provided the we adhere to the guidelines, protocols, and top-notch safety measures that we have put in place, I think there's a hell lot of confidence which got generated, and that went pretty ahead. Yeah, that's about
Thank you, Sunit. I think a good way of looking at business continuity post, the whole time cycle of pandemic. On a similar note, I would bring Sridhar Venkata from Kellogg's. They were more into the essential commodities also, and they faced quite a similar challenge. But let's see, Sridhar, what were your major learnings from this pandemic, and also what was the impact on your manufacturing supply chain, both internal and the extended? You have to unmute yourself, Sridhar.
My apologies. Yeah, my apologies. No, I think I would like to just echo what Sunit had been saying from a preparatory phase of it. I'll just put it into three different buckets per se. One is getting the social license to operate. How our ecological system is going to be supportive of how we can run our operations more smoother and easier way, where we said that working with regulators, working with our trade partners, working with transportation network, building the confidence measure is a first victory in terms of how do we win their confidence into the ways of working that we are going. The central theme we kept it very critically is the people at front, the safety of people at front. That's our central theme. That can't overrule whether it is Kellogg employee or the own employee, or whether it is any other support services or anyone in touch with it. Okay, so first we kept the people safety in front. All the initiatives we have driven. The second is a transport network. So there was no food for the drivers to go out and eat. Okay, typically they come. So what we have done very critically is that we started giving food, and it's the same food that I eat, extended to all my partners, whether it is transporter or whoever it is. It is devoid of the ranks and devoid of the logos or the designations they carry. It's the same food, high nutrition food, that we balance the nutrition in the food, and we have ensured it so that the partners feel valued, and they feel very much connected to the purpose of keeping the people in the front. So I think that is the second piece that we have done it. We shown it in actions lot. And third is that we captured everything in the form of a video, in terms of and sharing that videos to the families of the employees, just telling that you're important to us, and your member of family is leaving the home and coming to the operations, and we are absolutely accountable for his safety. Okay, we as a management team are absolutely accountable for his safety. And when like Sunit had said, I'm just echoing to what he said as that operation. And fortunately the responsiveness of regulatory was phenomenal. Just before this connect, I was just talking to my fellow speakers. The regulatory was just phenomenal. We just asked for the support was just pouring. We got that normalcy back in flash time of speed. They were telling that and they have we have connected through various formats, through FICCI and other industrial bodies, where we try to get that learnings very quickly and transform it into our operations. How safe are our operations? And that's how we won the social right to operate, the way I would call it. So I think that once the social right to operate is in place, a lot of the the ecological support is already flowing back to the operations. And then second is marrying to the purpose. Once the people safety piece is very well done, communicated, then we are come to that sharing bowls of joy and keeping the economy wheels running. I think that's the second piece that we have done very extensively good, in terms of what it matters is the sharing bowls of joy. It's not that people can't afford to buy a food, it is just that the food is not available for people to buy. So that's the second piece that we are marrying the purpose, is that it's not all about making money, or it's not all about looking everything business in a completely in economical sense. It's about how we drive a circular economy which would help the whole ecological system to grow and scale up for this challenge. Because the biggest unrest that can happen is the social unrest of economical disparity once the economic, once the pandemic gets ceased. I think that is where the second purpose that we brought into the whole into the light, in saying that why we wanted to run our operation. It's not about it's just to make sure that we run the circular economy very, very well, and thereby we are going to influence the people well-being, mental well-being at a large scale. That's the second piece that we have taken, which has garnered us the right to operate. Okay, one is social license to operate, second is the right to operate. This is what I want to do the business, and this is how I will influence a lot of other people, where we provided food for people. I remember that I get one of my leader getting a call saying that okay, this particular orphanage is running short of food, can you just look at it? And we know very clearly that the trucks availability is a premium at that point of time. Price is comes later, but at least the mere availability of truck itself. So what we said very clearly, business can run little later, but this is the organization or the ministry of the child came back to our leader and saying that can you provide the food? We just immediately organize the food first. So that's how we see that when we are keeping our purpose very, very clearly, it is about the social license to operate and the right to operate the business is what we earned. And the third is, with that communications and these things in place, we have made sure our partners are well glued to it. Whatever is that our context, where we are supporting the partners, they are not having that kind of knowledge with respect to what are all the controls that you need to have, both from a social distancing point of view. Second is a sanitation point of view. What Sunit has been echoing, I'm just echoing to him. So we have understood what is our frequent touch points, which are less frequently touch point. What is the sanitation protocol? We extended that knowledge to our partners and to everyone. I've been into various formats in FICCI where we went back and educated our imparted that knowledge that we carried, and we went back to the district authorities. The district Raigad district has asked us to share that knowledge. So thereby we made sure that the supply chain is very well balanced. It's not only that it's only that the organization is balanced, it's also the upstream and downstream partners are equally poised and equally capable to serve the whole supply chain in tandem. That is the third piece that we have done in terms of balancing it. That's how the reversal has happened. It took a bit of time in terms of bringing the business to the normalcy, and then what we call it as a care program. Okay, it's a care program that we have done, where in terms of providing the nutritional supplements, the sanitizers. We ran short of sanitizers at one point of time, if we recall, when the pandemic has hit us. So we just made sure that we collaborated with the right companies, got the sanitizers, we extended it to our the truck drivers, whatever we call it as the transportation partners, everywhere, so that we got it right.
That's a good framework of 3 points that you have brought about. It also is a challenge for ESG compliance that will come later. What disruption has done to the ESG compliance also is going to be a great challenge for organization and opportunity to be socially relevant. Moving forward, I think we have not. I'm coming to.
Yeah, just want to add one comment here before we go forward in the digital agenda or the discussion. I want to make a comment not as a an IT professional, but more as a consumer and as a parent. What this pandemic, when it was announced, you can imagine everybody going through. There was so much uncertainty what is going to happen. Nobody had went through lockdown before, and after the frontline workers, the medical professionals, the second thing I would say, our own heroes were the food supply chain, because you cannot keep a population of a country indoor if they are worried about feeding. And it is an amazing example of how it's not just technology, it's the people I would put first. People, their vision, their ability to motivate, their ability to execute and connect. That in a country like India, where there is so much we are different in so many ways, and the scale is, unimaginable for anyone. But as a
I agree.
consumer, having an assurance that you have food, you have chocolates, you have, cornflakes, you have all those, food commodities available to you, and nothing is in shortage. Nobody has to hoard. I mean, that is one thing I would compliment first all of the colleagues here as a consumer before we go ahead into the technical discussion. So big thanks to all of you.
I think can't agree more, Anchal. I think yeah, that's my view. Is yeah.
I think, Anchal, those are the points that are very important. Thank you for bringing it. And moving further into debate, we have with us Sanjeev Gupta from DIAGEO. We cannot see him. I think we have not been able to resolve his camera. But Sanjeev, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, all right. So that's good enough. What are your views? We have heard so many views on the kind of social impact of this disruption and the reaction of organization, and how this is also becoming one of the part of the resilience strategy in the future. What about manufacturing supply chain? And what were the challenges of the manufacturing supply chain during this pandemic?
Thank you. And first of all, my apologies to the entire team for not being able to switch on my video, being on a mobile phone. But and there's somebody is working right now to connect my laptop, but unfortunately, it is not at result. But so let me go ahead with this without video on this call. So to get back to this question around manufacturing. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So let me continue. I just want to check it. Let me continue. So, like everybody else said, Sunit talked about it, Sridhar talked about it, Devender talked about it. We are in the similar space of alcohol beverages products. We also face the similar challenges in terms of, safety of people, health and safety of people, which is the primary concern to everybody, not only our employees, even to in our mind, our managers' mind, our leadership mind, was the same thing, how people will kind of see it when they go to the factory, when they're on the entire supply chain, logistics, etc., etc. And so initially, like everyone else did, we also focused on health and safety when this pandemic kind of hit us in the month of March. And we kind of worked out lots of things in our factories to make sure that people indeed feel safe. I think it's one thing to really do actions to make plants safe, but another thing to make people feel safe. And that's where I think communication, the leadership drive to be on the floor, to really demonstrate to them, yes, indeed, I can work in the shop floor. I'm working along with you to make you feel safe. So in addition to all the things which all of us did in terms of, physical separation, social distancing, all the checks in terms of, temperature, etc., etc., we also needed to make sure that people felt safe getting into a factory and working on a packaging line or on a distillation plant. I think apart from that, the second important was challenge which we faced in our industry, in our company, was about manpower availability. And in our industry, while a lot of things have been automated, are being automated, lines are becoming more high speed, more automated, but our dependency on manpower continues to be very high. So that posed a big challenge to all of us, getting people in our factories to run the lines to meet the market demand. And that is a challenge which continues even now. While we started work on this front a few years back, did some work, but it's still a lot more work to do to make sure that our dependency on manpower goes down to a great level to really deal with these kind of crises or pandemics, if at all we need to have to deal in the future. The second part was that I don't know about other industries or other companies. In our company, we faced a huge challenge in terms of customer preferences changed. While the whole pandemic happened, people started buying the bigger packs in the market. Rather than going to the shop or the market again and again, they preferred buying the bigger packs in the market. So for our industry, the demand switched over overnight from smaller packs to the bigger packs. Now our lines were not really geared up to switch overnight into the bigger pack production. So that was a huge challenge for us to really reconvert or reconfigure most of our lines into producing bigger packs, 1 liter pack, 2 liter pack. And that's where I think the whole concept of flexibility came into play. Are we flexible enough to really meet the market demand or the customer demand whenever the situation demands us to make our lines flexible? The third part was about being agile. In our industry, again, we normally see a seasonal demand variation from winter to summer to rainy seasons. But when this pandemic hit, the demand went topsy-turvy in many markets. So we have to reconfigure our factories to supply from one state to another state at a very, very short notice. And in our industry, we also have a highly regulated environment where we require lots of permissions from the government, local state governments to move goods from one state to another state. So that became a third challenge for us. How do we kind of overnight reconfigure our supply chain, our plants servicing to the markets to meet this new demand from certain markets? But what happened, as it was discussed earlier, some markets were closed, some markets were open, some states were opening up. Somebody have a half curfew, somebody had a full curfew. Somewhere, lockdowns were there, somewhere, containment zones were there. So our demand was also varying from state to state, from within a state, from city to city, from geography to geography. So that was the third biggest challenge we faced about how do we kind of overnight reconfigure our supply chain end to end, not only manufacturing plus logistics to meet this demand volatility across the country. And I think fourth thing, which we'll talk about more later, we also figured out while this whole thing was going on, the need for contactless operations in our factories. How do we ensure that everything we do in our factory, like, we used to have this attendance system earlier. We said we'll discontinue attendance system. We'll go with thermal cameras. We'll not only kind of, scan the temperature, but also scan the people attendance coming to the factory. So I think those systems became much more relevant in this context. While we have been thinking about it in the past, how do we go into a face recognition or those kind of technological systems to make sure that people don't actually touch anything, people have a contactless work operations in our factories. It became much more relevant and much more urgent in this pandemic to really implement that. We could do it in certain plants in this given time frame, and our journey is continuing even now to create a more contactless operations in our factories. And contactless, it means everything, not only in terms of about temperature scanning or even people wearing masks in the factory. Safety audits has to be conducted. Can we do it online without people physically going to a line? So lot more focus has come on digital in the last I would say 6 or 9 months, and we have seen a lot of kind of focus moving on from physical to digital space, not only in the outside but within in our own operations. I see it now. There's an urgent need. There is a big need to now move.
Digital a little later. We'll come back to you for the digital thing a little later.
Yeah, so thank you so much. So I think that's what I would say. There are three big challenges for us: safety of people and making them feel safe and working in our factories. The manpower dependency was a huge problem and challenge for us to deal with. Third was about this customer requirement. So I would say these three big challenges we face in this pandemic times.
Thank you. And Anchal, coming to you, what are your views on business continuity in manufacturing supply chain from a perspective of a technology provider, but not the technology one, the business issues that you see which emerge among your customers?
Yeah. So sure, Dr. Singh, I went in out of line before because it is, an important message I wanted to convey. Personal thanks to all the leaders here who led different companies. So coming on to, we have all heard of the issues businesses are facing, the problems they are facing, and it is when we talk of how do we help business in this environment. Of course, safety is there, and how we can have solutions which can ensure people safety, incident tracking, and so on. But the other part is that supply chain is all about connections. So it is not about an individual process or a particular area that you want to improve. It is also important about the interconnectivity between them. What is happening in the recipe development impacts production. What is happening in production impacts what your truck requirements or truck loading is going to be. What is the expiry on a food item it depends how you are picking, packing, storing those items, and also through maintaining the traceability throughout the supply chain. So what we have heard, what we have, and the areas that we are working with different food and beverage companies across the world is right from a product conception to the whole supply chain, how we can enable technologies, how can we can use technologies like IoT, like edge computing, like cloud, for example, blockchain, in order to enable all of these processes right from a recipe development to a consumer picking the product off the shelf. So how do we maintain it all through? What I do want to emphasize is the importance of the interlinks in these processes, that it's like we call it a digital thread which goes from one end to the other, and that connectivity is as important as supply chain, and this thread goes not in doesn't remain within the organization, it goes through how the product is going, right from the farmers where we are sourcing the ingredient, how we are processing it, how we are packaging it, and how it reaches consumer. So there are enough opportunities. There are at the time where we are, technology can help a lot in all of these processes. It is not like an option anymore, how we see it and how we hear from customers. It has become an imperative. Like earlier in the industrial age, you would think of machine or manual, but now if you are setting up a plant, it is imperative to have machines. Similarly, when you're operating supply chains, it's not an option. It is like together with for business, it gives a differentiator, it becomes a competitive edge that you have to use technology creatively on your own path, where you are, where you want to be, and what could be that path in bringing in efficiency and connectedness. So these are, a supply chain, I'll just summarize. A supply chain has to be intelligent, it has to be predictive, that we are not only reacting to it, but we are able to foresee issues developing and be able to act on it. And the third is connected. And connected is connecting people, connecting what is happening in real world into a digital world, like a mirror image. Connected means uh, connecting people, processes, and connecting them across organizations through networks, whether it's upstream, whether it's downstream. Because it's not just about an ERP technology of recording what is happening. It is about how we can use all of this information in order to predict what is happening, in order to bring some control into what is affecting demand and supply, what is affecting production.
Thank you, Anchal. I think we got a very good glimpse of protecting employees, adjusting workforce capabilities during the pandemic, creating a roadmap for business continuity, and defining how to secure capacity and logistics. I think Devender got missed out in the whole process because his mic was not working. Devender, for 1 or 2 minutes, if you want to add anything to the first question or first issue of discussion, please go ahead. Are you there? Devender Reddy. All right, I think he's there, but he's not on the seat, I believe. Moving next, as Sanjeev, Sridhar, Sunit, and Anchal said, that reconfiguring the supply chain becomes very important. The manufacturing supply chain needs to be, made more a part of the whole rather than be a part of itself. And this pandemic, if you see the data from McKinsey, you see from other research, IDC and other things, you find that there has always been some amount of silos that have existed even within an organization between different aspects and element and department of supply chain. What are the key 1 or 2 points that we need to see that our supply chain become intelligent, granular, at the same time efficient, lean, and agile? Before I go into what kind of technology can actually enable them and what could be the technology deployment processes, what is the, how do we integrate them to bring the visibility both on the logistics side downstream and the supply side upstream? Because in the food industry, as Sunit was telling me yesterday, or Sridhar will say, tracing even the origin of the product is very important. And I think in pandemic, even the contactless tracing of the product is important. Similarly, as all of you saw, and I think I saw a very good point made by Sanjeev, where we said that problem is as the demand became so dynamic that demand changed according to the quarantine zones, red, yellow, green, and every day that changed. And I think it's continued to, have a scare in terms of the second uh, kind of virus that we see in Europe, largely in England. How do you really bring a very connected in terms of Anchal statement, supply chain, and what are the imperative for it? So let me call Sanjeev to start with. Now let me change the cycle so that everybody gets assimilated into the process. So Sanjeev Gupta ji, you can start. I'll get a hybrid way of getting people inside. Sanjeev, can you hear me? All right, I'll start with Sridhar.
Yeah, I think Sanjeev has spoken about the change in behaviors of purchasing patterns of the consumers. I think that is where the demand is going to come from. The first initial period of pandemic, I think the local grocer has the hit.
I think Sridhar, if you can we can broad base the discussion to supply chain rather than continuity and pandemic. Just to see the supply chain itself.
So the supply chain side, the focus was very critically that we were taking a priority of serving the top 42 SKUs, which are going to make sense for both from consumer and business lens. Okay, that was being taken as a priority to serve the demand. Okay, so that is where we brought in the technology of what are our run rates of using the demand planning tools. So we brought in that demand planning tool. What are the run rates? And also we looked at the responsive supply chain. So we kept the forecast aside because the pandemic there is no forecast. Where we said that we want to be replenishment side of supply chain, where we were going to replenish what is my stock norms at every places. So we got into a theory of constraint model where where we got in a new tool of a theory of constraint based tool of replenishing the supply chain, rather looking at replenishment as our key engine for supply chain than the forecast based decision making. So that is where we said that demand is just not it is just it is high in few of the channels and it is sluggish in few of the channels, like Sanjeev was talking about, basis that the whole purpose of that. So the game, we have changed it from a forecast based driven organization to a replenishment based driven organization. That's number one.
Building more decoupling points where a way of dealing with this uncertainty and trying to be a hyper local into the market, which were more dynamic and a hyper local approach, which I think Kellogg has adopted very well. Moving to Devender. Devender has come. Devender, did you hear the question or should I repeat it for you? What are the larger end-to-end supply chain issues in manufacturing supply chain?
Yeah, I think there were many, and I will start and also also response to what I did hear Anchal talk about how can companies like SAP help in the process. Very important is that first, if you look at is in terms of supply disruptions, and then where companies which have not integrated, and we've seen that even within our own companies, group of companies, as well as specific to Tata Coffee, those suppliers who are not integrated with us, we had issues in terms of communication, in terms of Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Devender.
Yeah, I think there is an echo. Yeah, so I think I'll touch upon that. There were many issues, but I think this is a very important thing. Your suppliers would rather be, and this is very specific to food companies, and I would hazard to guess whether it is Kellogg's or whether it is any of these, your suppliers are actually small. We may be large companies here, your suppliers are ultra small, medium and small and medium enterprises, right? And these companies, their ability to be on the network, and this is what we felt, although I mean we are working towards it, and that is why I can tell you that how do we integrate their supply chains, their planning, because one of the things that they would lack is, one is the electronic means to be able to connect, to connect. One, the supply chain visibility is a major issue. Their inventory visibility is a major issue, and I think the food companies would do well to actually get onto a kind of an EDI kind of a platform, like what you would find in the most of the automobile industry, where the integration is right from the supplier, and the supplier would exactly know when to deliver, what to deliver, kind of a thing, and the right place at the right time and in the right quantity. Because very often you would see that, and most of the food companies, at least that I have interacted with, were left with the wrong stocks of the wrong amount at the wrong places. That is because of, and you had suppliers who had their entire planning, because you are not getting into their planning cycles as to what are they planning for you, whom else are they planning for, when is your visibility going to come through, so that you order at the right time, because even your inventories and your inventory spaces were getting filled up with the wrong product. And therefore, some of the thing that we are working on is to say that it is not enough alone for us to be digitized inside. It is a very suboptimal kind of a system that to look at. Now we'll have to digitize the supply chain, although you would internally, and therefore when you are talking of manufacturing digitization, we're largely talking whether it is IoT or any of these systems, we're largely talking about internal digitization, internal contact tracing, internal automation, internal whatever. But a large part of our operations, which is inflows and outflows downstream, upstream, would depend upon how digitized your supply chain is across, and that is a very, very telling thing that we've had during this thing. Remember that and for them to own the kind of assets in terms of the IT assets, and this is for Anchal to think over, right? A full-fledged SAP system or a planning system or an ERP system would be a challenge, and therefore how would that be integrated, and how is the system completely is still a black box for us, although we are working on it to look at it from a very physicality of the entire thing. But I think a digitization of this entire thing would help, and I think the food companies would do well to actually look at the entire, or take a cue from the automobile industry to be looking at. And I'm not talking of best-in-class companies alone, I'm talking of companies in general. And you would find that a plethora of suppliers, 90% of your suppliers are not well architectured in terms of their digitization, or in terms of planning, or using leveraging planning tools to be helpful to you. So you may do the best of things, but if your suppliers are not geared up, or your supply chain system, both on the downstream and the upstream side, I think that would be a critical challenge, and that's an important challenge that we've taken it forward, because we still believe this thing is not over yet. With the kind of issues that we are seeing in UK coming up, the second waves coming up, we still feel that this is going to be a challenge. So how is the entire supply chain optimized so that everybody gets a share of that pie? And all our suppliers are not single suppliers. There are suppliers who are multi customers, who are multi customers. And I think that would be a very important thing. I have others, but I thought this is a very important thing which we felt was a critical issue.
I think that is a big issue in global supply chain also. If you see the pandemic and you look at the bills of material and their bills of material, and you look the supplier and then the sub-supplier and the different tiers, I think that kind of visibility is important, as most organizations were focused transactionally, even in terms of their procurement or strategic procurement was concerned. I think coming back to Sunit, Sunit, what are the critical element of a technology strategy within a manufacturing organization and plant, which are very essential for an end-to-end collaboration and also to make the factory more agile and a part of the larger supply chain? And what has been your experience, because you have been leading this transformation at Mondelez?
Yeah, so I'll just touch upon before I come to the central point. I'll just touch upon the consumer lens and work backwards, not take much time. See, with the consumer taste and the preference changing, some large packs or LUP packs and all, so definitely the factories has to be more and more agile. So one of the key things which came to my mind during this was that this is not the first disruption that we're facing. Definitely it is the I'll say the toughest, right? From demonetization and GST and all, we have also seen that how things will happen. Because if you remember, during demonetization time as well, for the first 3 months we're not even understanding how the consumers are going to behave, because there was a cash shortage, right? So I think IBP has played a very critical role in terms of bringing everyone together and bringing the right plans. So demand planning for me is a very important part out here. The only thing is that the process of IBP, like when you have demand planning, portfolio management, demand planning, supply planning, IR and MBR, can we crash that? Unlike current scenario of having the entire process in one month, can we crash? Because it's so the speed in which the things are changing, I think those process has also to be looked into in terms of crashing the timelines. So that is one factor is very important, and I think that has really helped a lot for the last 3-4 years, how we have been managing and navigating through this crisis. That is one part. Secondly, in terms of, I'll break this technology into two parts. One is about the control tower, about the downstream part, and the control tower about the upstream part. See, when you talk about the downstream part, control tower is very important, because we have around 2,000 distributors and all, and not from today. Everyone is through VMI, vendor managed inventory, that is continuous replenishment system. This is the norm system, will just replenish the stocks to them, so that the right demand, whatever the secondaries are happening, the same thing is reflected in the primary. I think these were very helpful tools which we started 4 years back, has given us the rich dividends currently also in this kind of a tough scenario and unprecedented challenge here. Coming back to the logistics control tower out here, the visibility is a very important part. One of the key things is that during the pandemic also, the initial 2 months, just imagine on March 22nd, when everything came to standstill, so many vehicles were flying across the country and the vehicles were stranded, and it is all cold chain. A temperature has to be managed within 18 to 22 degrees centigrades, right? So none of our stocks were damaged. That is the power of the control tower that we had, wherein we had IoT devices in all the vehicles. On a real-time basis, we used to monitor in terms of the temperature of the vehicles, the temperature of the chocolate inside, plus if something hanky-panky happening with the vehicles or not, because of some robbery and all those things normally happens, right? So I think that is a very important aspect of having a visibility of end-to-end, from the time my stock starts from my factory, goes to my warehouse, and from my warehouse it goes to the distributors. The other thing out here, Dr. Singh and other panelist members here, is that typically when stocks move out from warehouse and finally reaches to the distributor, is the distributor really satisfied? Is the distributor really happy about that? So there's a concept called perfect order index, wherein you scale it up in a way like each and every invoice will be given a satisfaction index, wherein it gives an ample opportunity for any supply chain professional to really understand, okay, in that particular geography anything is going wrong, and how do we can take some steps to correct that. Otherwise what happens typically is that it's all reactive. You don't even get to know what is happening, how are you servicing to the distributors. So by the virtue of this kind of a model, I'll say the real digital value comes here, wherein each and every invoice is measured against some kind of parameter, be it in quality, be in terms of delivery, be in terms of OTIF, and you give a score. And finally, you get to know as a professional supply chain professional, fine, all my 2,000 distributors, okay, 90% of the distributors are happy. In a score of 1 to 10, they're at 8.5 or 9. Okay, if some 5% are less than 5, some And these are the kind of things that we need to do. So that is the power of digital. I feel, digital is something which has to give a value. What is the value I am giving to my customer, consumer? Okay, now coming back to the manufacturing side, one of the two key things. One is about definitely what we felt is that how this maintenance part can be managed. And here exactly I think uh, IoT plays a very critical role out here, wherein it measures the vibration of a machine, and finally it goes into a predictive maintenance as opposed to a preventive maintenance. Preventive maintenance is something like we all know and we all do. Okay, but I think with the real implementation of IoT devices and the sensors into that, and finally using artificial intelligence, when you have big chunks of data from the machines, right, you can really able to predict, okay, this is by January or by June, these are the machines which will go which will definitely require maintenance. Basis the frequency and basis the vibrations that we can analyze. So that is one thing which we are going full hog to implement, and definitely that is a real value to the business which is going to come here. Secondly, the other part is about the quality part. I think in quality as well, the golden batch concept, can I predict the quality of the batch through artificial intelligence measures or not? And of course robotics and all those things will be there. As we have modern plants, robotics will be there, and definitely productivity is going to increase and all, right? Then you'll be having the digital dashboards wherein everything will be on a kind of a control tower, you sitting on you in your room, and finally you get to know at each and every minute how much is getting produced, whether any defective is getting generated, and so on and so forth. But I think apart from the visibility part in the factory, most important is that can I really predict the maintenance failures? Can I really predict my quality? Those are the key areas wherein digital will go in a big way, and I think is a big value which will be put across the table from that part.
Anchal, before I bring you into the process of both on the demand planning as well as the role of IoT and other technology into making the factory the factories of tomorrow in a very interconnected way, let me go back to our panelist from DIAGEO, Sanjeev Gupta, and ask Sanjeev about his views on technology in manufacturing operations. Even if you want to touch the view of interconnected supply chain, I think you're welcome to do that, and both of them can be combined together.
Yeah, so let me pick on this whole piece of digitization and automation in the manufacturing space in our industry. I think I would articulate it in three areas. One area is all about, we call it digital intelligence, what Sunit touched upon, that we've got lots of systems and practices in our factories today wherein we actually record data manually in our logbooks, registers, etc., etc. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to kind of digitize this entire data capturing. And nowadays we've got sensors available which can capture data online from our entire process plant, from our packaging lines, and create a digital dashboards. And as we have seen in our experience, not only create digital dashboard, they also kind of help you to figure out what is the kind of diagnosis of an issue, what is the kind of an action plan which has to be implemented in real time. So this is one piece of work which is now, I think, taking shape. We have begun to work on this. There are a lot of companies who are working on this right now. But I see in the fullness of time, the digital intelligence will really create an interconnected factory where even within a factory, all the functions will be interconnected. They don't need to kind of a production guy to go and report to a maintenance that a particular issue has happened in a production shop floor. So what I need from you, the system will be so well integrated, interconnected between functions, between departments, between lines, that anybody can see on the real-time basis what's going on, what needs to be done, what's our solutions to this problem. As I think Sunit touched upon, I have also seen a very beautiful system wherein nowadays there's a mobile app-based maintenance system. An operator who has to kind of do a predictive maintenance or a preventive maintenance on a line, he can actually open his mobile app on the mobile phone, and he can look at, do I need to do a kind of maintenance today? If I need to do, what do I need to check? If I need to check, what I need to kind of do for checking that particular part of the machine. So I think the whole piece of this digitization will, I think, manifest itself in a good digital intelligence tool for manufacturing operations in the times to come. The second piece is all about, I would say, robotics. And robotics is actually now becoming quite big and bigger. It was no more, earlier time that we will just, automate certain part of our operation. We replace manpower by robots. I think robotics is taken many fold and many now dimensions of robotics. Robotics is about one piece is of course simple that we automate our lines, we automate our pick and place systems, we replace manpower by robots and replace manpower dependency. But I have also come across the new technologies where we can do things like checking a quality of a product. Yeah, you feed in the 24 or 50 parameters you want to check in, put it into a box, and there are multiple cameras and vision systems which will actually scan the entire product and give out a report in a few seconds about compliance to the quality standards or non-compliance to the quality standards. So I think this whole piece of robotics will actually acquire very many different dimensions as we move ahead in future. The third part is all about how do we kind of connect the manufacturing with the rest of the supply chain. I think all the functions in supply chain, be planning or sourcing or logistics, have their own systems. Logistics we are talking about nowadays, transport management systems, RFID, traceability, GPS, everything is coming on board. Similarly, planning, we are looking at a lot more automated planning systems today, integrating demand planning to supply planning, daily production scheduling to giving it to the transporters. But I think what's important to really figure out and what will be the future, I would say something like blockchain, which is an emerging technology. If we can interconnect these four pieces together, our suppliers who are sitting in a different portal today, our planning team who's sitting in a different portal today, to our manufacturing team, to our transport team, if we can interconnect these four pieces together of the supply chain, and then finally we have the consumer and customer feeding in from the front line, and we can create a completely interconnected system which will help us to deliver what the consumer and customers want in their own time space. It's not about what I want to deliver to the market today. It's about what the consumer want. When does he want it? Where does he want it? I think we can connect these 4 or 5 pieces together by usage of the current technologies available. And I think Sunit talked about it. AI, machine learning, blockchain, etc., etc. I think I'm looking forward to a time wherein somebody will kind of create this kind of a technology interconnect between the various pieces of supply chains to deliver what our consumer and customers want. And last piece I'll talk about is about entire cost optimization, because for supply chain, if you have to see every business, what do they expect from a supply chain? They want a customer service, they want an optimal cost or a competitive cost, and they want a good quality product to delight the consumers. I think we have talked about customer service. The second part is also equally important. While each one of us are competing in an industry, how are we compared to our other companies in the same industry? I think if we can create a system wherein we have end-to-end cost optimization model, which is a real time. Even today, we have got cost optimization models in our industry. I know of. I think Mondelez also has got similar systems where you can optimize end-to-end supply chain costs. But that data is more of a once in a year, once in a 6 months. It's not real time. If we can create a real time information about end-to-end supply chain costs and link it to our consumer and customer demand patterns, I think that will be a wonderful unlock for the future supply chains to really meet what a business wants us to deliver. I think it's not important for what supply chain can deliver. I think more important part is what business wants us to deliver, and are we capable to deliver that? I think the future of supply chain will lie in this space, connecting to the business strategy, what the business deliverables are, whether it's the portfolio choices, the market choices, then how do the supply chain gear to deliver that through usage of technology, which connects all the pieces of supply chain together.
Thank you, Sanjeev. I think that was a lovely exposition of what we will see in future and what we are seeing today. I think one intervention, we were just doing some work for a cement company, a major cement company, and they had flow of data from their logistics node to the manufacturing nodes and also to the last miles. And they were serving any kind of demand that was emerging from the sales from any factory anywhere. And when we looked at the data which was easily available, we found that the cost to serve most of the orders were not in favor of the business. And I think we could have just denied that, rather than not knowing and having the right kind of data and not able to process them on a regular basis. Real time and regular basis can be a very important challenge to the organization. Sometimes we have this data and we don't use it. And I think this company had the data and they could not use it. Anchal, coming back to you about the first part of it, I'll come back to the second part of you later after Bharat, who has joined right now, will get his opinion also and then come back. about what Sunit and all of them have said about end-to-end supply chain, the role of big data, how blockchain can act as a backbone for integrating technology, connecting and using machine learning. Big data can give insights which can be amazing for businesses. What are your views on that?
Actually, for the topics that we are discussing, I'm looking at the watch and there is less time. These are very interesting topics. There is a lot for us to connect on. I'll start with what Mr. Devender talked about in terms of enabling SMEs, right? Our small and medium enterprises who are suppliers, and we cannot win the race. It's together. It's as a chain that the whole supplier network. So it's not just one chain, it's the whole network of chains. If everybody is digitized, it benefits all of us and it helps bring in optimization beyond our own boundaries. So SAP launched in mid of the year, around May, June, we launched a global Bharat program to bring in affordable digital capabilities for the small and medium enterprises. So that is one part of it. The second part of it is, how do we bring in the, when we talk of planning, when we talk of sales and operation planning, how do we bring in inputs from the supply chain partners in the simplest way possible? Not that there have to be prerequisites or installations or versions before you are able to do that, but something as simple as that, this is my requirements, and tell me based on the calculations you have done how much it can be covered, or something will have to be shifted or reprioritized. So those inputs are already included as capabilities in our planning solutions. Likewise, if I talk of planning manufacturing, we have good stories to share. One of the food manufacturer, this biscuits pasta manufacturer in Spain, we used IoT sensors to look at the temperature of raw materials. So rather than frequent checks, now it is multi-parameter inputs available into the system, which can then be fed into machine learning also in order to have more control on the production process. So there are enough stories on how industry, especially food and beverage industry, is adopting technology, is digitizing, and this information, whatever from sensors we are getting, it is not only relevant for that vertical or that area, it is relevant for everyone. This information of the asset performance is relevant for the predictive maintenance part. This is relevant for the quality, right? It is relevant for the compliance part of it. So this part is there. The other part where we talked about, in terms of maintenance, in terms of the assets. So it again becomes very important. Reading from the physical, creating a digital mirror of that asset and being able to maintain it. One thing that we as a technology firm are taking direction is when we talk of the network. So the design and the capabilities not only for the organization but for the network. Leveraging blockchain technology, we have worked on a logistic business network solution, track and trace, which goes beyond an organization's boundary. This is a blockchain based solution where you can have the food provenance right from the origin to ultimately up to the customer. When we talk of, we call it network of networks. So we are dealing with transportation providers. So there is collaboration piece there, there is invoice processing piece there. We are working with, for track and trace, we have this blockchain related capabilities. When we talk of assets, the next direction is having your assets on a network so that the manufacturer or the service provider knows how and when predictive servicing has to be done. So I completely agree with, like Sanjeev said, like all of the colleagues here are sharing, that it is all about the purpose. What is ultimately the purpose is delivering to customer what they want, where they want, and what is the simplest straightforward path to do that. How technology can help into this simple path to achieve what we want. Like I said, it can be a spreadsheet update. EDI is one part, but if this through EDI, through whichever way possible, if our planning systems are flexible enough to include it. One key success factor which I see for technology is the simplicity adoption are there. The third part is, for business, environment will keep changing. We live in dynamic environment. So rather than fixed rules, how do we design the systems that can we can make them adapt to the changing scenarios. This could be product mix changes. This could be, any business models that we are thinking. For example, food and beverages can be clubbed with the IPL matches, and subscription, online subscription could be clubbed together. So it really opens up the whole opportunities for us. How do we use these blocks, put them together for a solution that delivers ultimately to the customer? So from recipe development to manufacturing to logistics to asset management, we are working with many customers in all of these areas. That's where we are keen to understand, where are we in the journey and how do we leverage these technology pieces. Ultimately, for us, it is as a technology partner, how you can do the business in the simplest way. So that is the direction that we are working on.
Thank you, Anchal. I think I'll go to Bharat Kundal from Olam. Bharat, and what are, in fact, as we are coming to the end of the discussion itself, I would take up your views on what are the few digital directions that organization needs to take, and what are the key critical success factors?
Sure. So first of all, let me tell you about Olam. Olam basically a leading company worldwide from the agri products basically. So Olam has always a focus on basically how we can go for a kind of real-time data, how we can basically help to the farmers, okay, through the new technologies kind of thing, or through digitalization kind of thing. So so what we did basically, like for a supply chain, getting the raw material, especially in agri industry, getting a raw material, okay, as per your installed capacity, that will really define how your operations is going on. So our major focus basically is on that how we can use these technologies into the field, okay, so that our farmers get right kind of information in right time. So like across Olam, we got basically a system called ICT system, where is information and communication technology. So it's a completely basically a system wherein 100% paperless kind of activities are happening, starting from the field registration or farmer registration till the crop comes to the factory and gets unloaded. Not a single person is involved into basically the writing work sort of thing. So these were installed, and the major advantage we got is that basically we can really forecast the how much quantity we are going to get for the particular year actually. So that is basically a volume forecast in terms of raw material availability. Second thing, what we are getting out of this is that basically your accuracy plays very critical role. Okay, how much and all those things, and to really make it a success, this ICT system is basically supported with the. See, there is basically a crop calendar. Now, each and every farmers, like we're dealing with 40,000 farmers, okay, in our command area. So every farmer is getting the technical advisory in an auto mode actually. He need not to call to anyone in our factory or our field staff. Basis the crop calendar, because the sugar cane especially is a 12 months crop. So every month, starting from first till last month, what are the activity he's supposed to do? So he gets his SMS, and accordingly he takes the corrective action, and he's getting benefited in terms of reducing its input cost and increasing the productivity. This kind of thing what we're doing. So what I and what Olam really feel is that this kind of digital system what we are looking has really completely turned around in terms of efficiencies, in terms of customer service actually. Because if we know that how much crop is coming to us, best is that we can go and do the forward booking about final product kind of thing. So our estimation is really coming very closer. Okay, so there is not much of variance. And in terms of like, as Anchal said about the asset management, so we are very aggressively working on basically the what you call the predictive maintenance. Okay, we are focusing on the best practices kind of thing. Okay, so there are autonomous maintenance. Okay, so along with predictive maintenance, we are really focusing on the autonomous maintenance. And before autonomous maintenance, the step called 5S basically. So we are taking help of like Like today, sitting in my, even on my mobile, if I got basically a equipment which is a very critical equipment, and if that equipment goes for any failure, might have to stop our operations. So all the vibration, temperature, frequency, everything, even sitting at home, I can see on my mobile, and we can really decide that where we are going. Even you can see, take 1 month's data, you can see what if there is a peak, or what was the reason that there was basically a frequency variation, or there is a vibration variation, or temperature variation. So these are the things I think really helping us, and in today's scenario, I think most of the manufacturing units are trying to go for it actually. But still there is a long way to go. How to do it basically. We are also now trying to really make sure that how we can reduce our changeover time actually. How we can, if about today my changeover time is 2 hours, how I can reduce to say half an hour, so that I can save that time, I can improve the OE kind of thing, and that basically also will help us and give us some kind of a, about the health checkup of the particular equipment. So that is my view, that I think automation plays a very critical role in supply chain, and if we really want to achieve, and more than there is a precision actually, okay. Nowadays, the quality parameters are so stringent actually, okay. So there are, like, online measurements are there, okay, which really help us to the manufacturer and the customer also to get the right product, as we call it as a first time right kind of thing. So we are using so many technologies basically in different areas in our operations.
Thank you, Bharat. I think that's a very informative thing. And as you see the farmer agitation in this country, I think if they hear to you, they would be, inclined towards the third contract farming norms. But I think in food manufacturing, price, quality, and price, quality, and quantity matters. And managing your supplies in terms of forward arrangements, either in India or elsewhere, is a very critical area. I think I have consulted with a lot of companies in the food domain during the period 1996 to 2011. And I think what I found was that a critical vertical integration and technology can be of a very significant use in trace, in terms of visibility, in terms of even providing the right kind of information to my farmers all across the country, and they can know where to sell and how to sell. I think it could also be a global integrator from the government side, where we could be part of it, and maybe SAP and others can play a very vital role in the backing of the supply chain.
So, like, India, sir, I can give you one example. I think that will really benefit to the group actually. Like, before we implemented this ICT system for the farmers or in the field, like every year I used to get basically from my field team that we get say 10 lakh metric ton of sugar cane. But ultimately when the season gets over, it was coming to say 8 lakh. So that, it was very difficult to do a proper S&OP kind of thing. But the day we started this ICT, the real time data are coming, and now the accuracy level is almost at level of 95%. So it really help us to develop, create a good supply chain wherein you knows that what you are going to get and how you are going to service to your customer.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting area, but we'll stop here for the benefit of everybody, and we'll go as we'll close it. Time is near. I'll take 1 minute from all of you to tell us about the digital acceleration issues in the future that needs to be taken care of. Not currently, but in future, what are the digital acceleration, right? Going from now, that would be the case. Sunit, can we start with you?
Yeah, I think one of the key points I just wanted to mention here, what is about the organization culture as well? As we go for the digital imperatives for the future, I think the culture part is very important in terms of the org culture, how it is driven from the top, then in terms of the resources, in terms of the training, capability of the people, plus the change management part as well. So we should not be in a scenario wherein we are having digital for the sake of the digital, though digital is must. So 87, by one of the surveys I just got to know, like 87% of the companies in the currently are having some.
Anyway, Sunit has already made his point. He can't be heard now, but he has very clearly made the point. So we move to Devender.
Oh, sorry. Did you hear?
We heard 80% of it. So again, I thought we'll go ahead with it. You communicated well. So we got the gist of it. So Devendra, what are 1 minute for you also in terms of comment on how do we, facilitate digital acceleration?
Yeah, I think I echo what Sunit has said. I think it's all very well. Technologies are there, right? And they're available. The intelligence is available, the data is available. I think we need people who can drive insights, right? We have people who need to use it. And I think core of everything, like during the pandemic, it was you actually needed people to come and work. You need
Right.
people to make it happen, right? And I think the first step would be in terms of training people, not only in this entire digitization, to actually make it aligned with their own, whether it is in their KRAs or whether it is in their growth plans or whether it is in their furtherance of their knowledge and this thing. I think that would be a very critical thing. And competencies in terms of, and competencies would be in terms of the new competencies. Like if you look at 10 years back, it would be in terms of different kinds of, whether it is predictive maintenance or whether it is preventive maintenance or whether all of this. I think the new competencies that would be required is in terms of data analysis, data analytics, which all managers in the company, most of the employees in the company, or the employees who are relevant, should be very, very conversant with this new thing called digital and what we make of it. And you have an asset, but what you make of it is going to be the key differentiator between a company to company or an organization or a supply chain to supply chain.
That's very true. Sridhar?
I think echoing to the speakers, the only thing is my view was the comfortness, the human comfortness is to be taken into consideration, because most of the time our experience comes onto the table, then the data comes onto the table when we troubleshoot a problem, right? So the urgency of not getting a comfortness of looking into data driven solution mode to a human experience driven solution mode is where the conflict comes. How we use digitization as a critical enabler in terms of getting it things right is one perspective that gets into cultural element. The number two aspect is acceptance of those technologies into the plane, okay, where it is automatic troubleshooting equipment. So the equipment itself will start telling that I am having a problem at here, just come here, no need to follow the 10 steps to reach to this particular step. The machine itself is telling right now that I am having a problem here, you come straight here, so that the time is crashed. So that in terms of receiving that signal and responding to that signal, it itself is a challenge in terms of whether my experience is great or that intelligence is great. I think that is the conflict people have to be coached to get over and embrace it completely and use that as a critical enabler in building the organization success and building their human potential as a great success. I think that's the point I want to make here.
Thank you, Venkata. Sanjeev?
Yeah, finally, I think you got to see me on the web camera. I just make 2 or 3 points.
I forgot whether I've seen you or not. We heard you so much, so I think it was a continuity in that process. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just quickly summarize
with technology.
Yeah. I'll just quickly summarize. I think what Sunit, Devender, and Sridhar talked about. I think to me there are 3 important points. If I quickly say 3 bullet points to summarize the discussion. First is about making a business case. When you talk about technology, we got to have a solid business case to induct technology in any part of our business operations. It's very important to really work out the cost of the technology, what benefit gives to the business, into the company, make a sound business case. But that is only when you can build a leadership commitment to the technology. Otherwise, a nice technology, good technology, leadership commitment not there, probably will not happen. That's one. Second part, the cost of technology is also very important. Many times we have faced challenges in our businesses that the ROI or the paybacks are too long. So let's wait for the cost to come down. Fortunately, the cost of technology is coming down dramatically in last so many years. Like solar power today, becoming a commodity available to everybody. A lot of startups have come in the many of these spaces we talked about: digital intelligence, interconnected factories, blockchains. But the cost of technology getting a right vendor or business partner to customize solutions for you to your business needs is very, very important. And third is about right talent and right people. It was discussed before. I think getting the right people in your team, in your business, who can understand this piece and drive it with passion, with commitment, and get the business benefit out of this is very, very critical to drive this whole digitalization piece in our industry, in our companies.
I think the fit to purpose is the most important piece here. Whatever multiple technologies are available, what really fits to your business needs, the business pain points, it does matter. So thereby the commitment of resources or commitment of resources in terms of people, money, and whatever it will come. I think the fit to purpose is the most critical element.
Thank you, Sridhar. Bharat?
Okay, if I have to summarize, we all know that digitization is a very good tool, basically, which is really helping us in terms of reducing the manpower, improving the productivity, improving the quality, all those things. Even reducing your cost of maintenance, reducing breakdowns, and all those things. The only thing what I feel that the issue is basically the mindset of the people. Actually, we have to really see it's very difficult to get the people who will directly adopt the changes basically. So in our organization also, we are really facing this sometime, the mindset of the people is not really coming, on the top of it actually. So we have to struggle, even though we know the benefits and all those things, but you can't change the people in a day. That mindset is required, that digitization has a lot of advantage, but for that, somebody has to really, drive it very aggressively, and people, you have to take as a team. I mean, it's very difficult to really get implemented the digital as a single person. The team should really accept the changes, kind of thing. So that is our, way in Olam. We are really very high on the, digitization basically across globe. But these are our few learnings, findings are there, which we are really working by, improving their capabilities. Okay, you can't change. Sometimes you got a old people working with you since last 20 years. You may not be that much capable to really, handle the current digitization process are there. So we need to really support him for his capability building kind of thing, his training and all this. Sometimes communication also come into the picture. So these are few difficulties, but ultimately, digitization plays a very critical role in terms of accuracy, in terms of reducing the cost, in terms of.
That's a good point, Bharat. Thank you very much. Let me go to Anchal for the final panelist comment.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Dr. Singh. See, these are all the ground reality, what we are looking at. While technology is there, how does it serve the purpose and the priorities for the business right now? So we are working with customers all over the globe in food and beverage in different areas. Like I mentioned, it's a vast scope from the recipe development all the way to asset management, to manufacturing, uh, the technology adoption, and it's a journey, right? Innovation, that way there is no short stop that we have arrived and this is the product. As and when as market is changing, as our supply chains demands are thing, the technology is changing, the new products are coming up, new capabilities are coming up. How do we leverage capabilities in line with, like you said, cost to serve? Similarly, there is a cost to value from a technology. So what purpose it's solving, what pain area it's elevating, and how others are benefiting. So we are uniquely positioned, one, to be having solution in all of these areas. The other unique positioning is the interoperability, like having an asset, downtime. How does it affect production? How can we avoid critical, how can we avoid disruption affecting critical orders? Downtime maintenance is integrated with production. Like this, there are many stories where we see this boundary between two, where having them in different system or different platforms will become a challenge. These are the businesses where we need to see not only what we are doing, but what is happening left and right. How do we affect them downstream and upstream in order to make the whole chain efficient? So that way, there are enough stories in food and beverage sector where how digitization people have done, how it has benefited them, what are they doing next, and it's an ongoing dialogue. So I'm just glad to hear out our esteemed panelists here. I'm looking forward to connecting further and sharing some, these stories as and when it comes up. But it's been all very important points that we called out today, and many which are food for thought, right? Because we are uniquely positioned, how we can act on it.
Right. I think that's very well put up on the technology front, and all of you put on the leadership front. And I think, I was referring to a study which says that, and this is Sunit's comment on IBP has to be short term. What has been found in the period is that one of the best things that has happened is that everybody has gone into their war room and started planning for tomorrow, and all the stakeholders came together. That's a very significant inclination for what IBP or as a new advanced SNOP has to do. There is a gap between above the line and below the line, and I think what we found was that there's a lot of above the line exercises of change management, but below the line is firefighting. And unless you bring both things together, like what Anchal says below the line, which everything can be streamlined with your own order efficiency, the index that you are talking about. I think this will become a very perfect way to go about and build a competitive advantage. Planning has to be, IBP is more of a replanning and long-term horizon, scenario building, what if, and all these need to facilitate everything in the autonomous end-to-end supply chain, wherever they sit, logistics or procurement or factory, anywhere where they sit. So I think I thank all of you, Bharat, Sanjeev, Sridhar, Devender, Sunit, and Anchal for making, for contributing to this discussion. And thank you, SAP, for supporting us to take this forward. So thanks for your contribution.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get back to you with the other things that we will be doing at ISCM along with SAP. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.